Thank you very much indeed. Last one before lunch. If I seem at all distracted during this talk, I have just had a call, seriously, from my bosses in London saying, can you go to Kiev, which is where, obviously, there is quite a bit of action happening. I'm hoping these clickers will come into life in a minute, because I've called the talk The Baby and the Vulture. There we are, The Baby and the Vulture. I'll come to the reason for a minute. And when I was sort of invited to do this, I thought, how can I frame this debate? How can I find the right bit of videotape that will convey the issues of being a war correspondent or being someone who's reporting in a disaster zone? And I found the answer with David Attenborough's Natural World. And so the dilemma here is what we face.
They were in a really serious condition. They were thin and obviously starving.
Mark knew that many of the calves would not survive. Although desperately painful to witness, nothing would convey the cruel power of the drought more than this mother's struggle to keep her baby alive.
The thing about filming a situation like that, you know, when an elephant calf dies, is that when you're actually filming it, you're so caught up in the moment. But it was only after filming, when I put the camera away and I looked there and there was this dead calf and the mother sort of standing there grieving, that the full impact of what I've just filmed hit me. People often say to me, you know, could you not have intervened in a situation like that? There are times when you can help, but in that time in Kenya, there was no food available. Now, you have to also consider the mother. If we'd gone in there and tried to take the calf away, it would have been absolute mayhem. She'd have got incredibly stressed, and that would probably have jeopardized her survival.
So that is the dilemma that we face when we go to a place where terrible things have happened, and you've got to decide, you know, the camera's on me, and often something terrible is happening behind. I want to talk now about this particular photo, and that's why I've called this talk The Baby and the Vulture. This was taken in Somalia in 1993 by Kevin Carter, who was a well-known South African photographer. He'd gone there. They were about to get a UN flight out. He grabbed that image, ran to the plane. No one knows what happened next. Presumably, the vulture moved in on the dying baby. We don't know. He won a Pulitzer Prize for this photograph. And he was part of a group of photographers and camera people in South Africa called the Bang Bang Club. It sounds kind of macho, you know, is this a good bang bang story? And that is a phrase that is still used today, i.e., are there lots of guns going off? Are there lots of shots? And it's a very haunting photo. And I kind of wondered, when I looked at it, whether actually are we, the journalists, the camera crews, the satellite operators, the translators and everyone else, the vultures who go to these places and do our reports on the terrible things that are happening when we're there. It is worth saying something about the culture of being a war correspondent, because there's a sort of romantic Ernest Hemingway myth that we are smooth-talking, heavy-smoking, heavy drinking, drug-taking, sexually promiscuous, what's not to like so far, people who go to these places and then kind of do our stuff. When I started out in journalism, this was the book that was required reading if you were a foreign correspondent, and I'm sure some of you will just not believe, I can't believe that a book like this could be published today with this title. It's kind of shocking, and it talks of what we do, which is, you get off a plane. If I go to Kiev tonight or tomorrow morning, I'm going to pick up a translator who speaks. I'm going to go to where there's been something happening, And the first thing who speaks English? Because you want to get someone to tell their story. And that is part of what we do. And so we need people who can tell us the story. But I think that this image of us being kind of these macho guys who go there, we don't care about what we see, we're impervious to what has happened, is completely wrong. We're heavily trained before we go to a war zone. We do a hostile environments course. We do all sorts of other things that prepare us for what we're going to do. And normally when you arrive in a war zone, you arrive in a kind of sea of chaos. Things are very unclear, it's very hard, it's sometimes scary, often it's quite surreal. And nowhere more so than when I went to report on the invasion of Kuwait, invasion of Iraq, I should say, in 2003. And of course then, everyone believed, it seems laughable now, but everyone believed that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And so we were trained by the army, we were taken away to have military training on what to do in the event of a chemical or biological weapons attack. And broadly speaking, you have to get a gas mask on pretty quickly, and you have to get a chemical protection suit on. And everybody, even the people, even the Russians and the French, who thought it was completely wrong to go to war in Iraq, all believed that Saddam Hussein had these chemical weapons. And so we were staying in this 5-star hotel in Kuwait City, waiting for war to start, and eventually it did start.
Okay, we've got an air raid here, we're going.
So that was live on telly when I was, we were talking, and you just had to get it on. And there were missiles coming in to Kuwait City that were being intercepted. And so it was pretty terrifying. Now, we'd been building up to this, and there was a sort of preparation period, a phony war period, where we were wandering around with these backpacks that you just saw me getting the gas mask out of, and we had to have it with us at all times. And I had gone back to my room to collect my notepad, which I'd left behind. And suddenly, for the first time that we're there, the air raids ring out across the city. And it's the most terrifying sound, I'm sure if any of you have been in a situation like that, it is absolutely terrifying. So I just got on the floor, I put on the gas mask, I put on the rubber gloves and rubber boots and my chemical protection suit, and I looked up onto the roof of the hotel, and all my colleagues are there in gas masks, and it's really eerie. And then there's at the door, and I've got my gas, and I don't know whether any of you have ever, but it's quite laboured breathing with a gas mask on, and I'm thinking this is security saying, get down to the basement now, we've got an attack, go quickly. And I go to the door, open the door, and I say, yeah? And they say, can we turn down your bed, sir? Yeah, come in. And there are two guys there looking at each other thinking, he likes dressing up in rubber in the privacy of his hotel room. So we went down to the basement, and I just kind of I'm telling this story because I want to talk about the moral dilemmas of what you face. It was a room about this size. There were 400 of us staying in the hotel, about the same number of hotel staff. And they said, actually, just so we can do a head count of everybody, we're counting for everybody, all the guests, could you go that side? Hotel staff, can you go that side? And there were 400 people, NGOs, journalists, military personnel, all sitting there with gas masks on, their chemical protection suits, and on the other side of the room, Bangladeshis, Filipinos, Palestinians, Egyptians, Indians with nothing. Not a thing. And you're staring at these people with your protection suits on, and they've got absolutely... And that's what you face. And we said to the hotel, you're making very, very good money out of us being here. Every one of these people has to get a gas mask. Whoever the gas mask salesman was in Kuwait City that particular day had a very, very good day because 400 gas masks were bought. And then you saw all these staffs with these little cute Nike bags on their backpacks. And for the rest of the time we were there, they were able to wear these gas masks. And so that was the situation where we can make a moral difference. You can make sure that on a minor level that people are okay. I want to talk now a bit about Afghanistan, which is where I was reporting from in 2001. And there, of course, there's a kind of slight dilemma about what you tell your family about what you're doing. I knew on that road which we travelled, 3 journalists had died the previous day. They were travelling down the road and they got a lift with the Northern Alliance, who were the troops that were backed by the Americans, and they were trying to get rid of the Taliban from their last stronghold in Kunduz, and they were killed. And so, it's a dangerous place to be for journalists. I'll just play a...
Until today, the road behind me has been a no man's land between the Taliban and Northern Alliance front lines. But American bombing has changed that. Suddenly, the Northern Alliance feel confident enough to push down this road towards the Taliban positions.
So I was there. I'm wearing a blue flak jacket, not a khaki flak jacket. We have to distinguish ourselves as war reporters that we are not part of the military. We are distinct from the military. We don't give them rides, and it was tough. There was one day when I was reporting on this front line, when I've got this flak jacket on, and this guy, Taliban soldier, Northern Alliance soldier, who's got his AK-47, he comes up and he wants to, although the thing is made of Kevlar, there are 2 plates here and on your back that are made of porcelain, and he kind of banged on it and said, what, and said in, Dari, whatever the language was, oh, wow, it's amazing, and took the safety catch off his AK-47 and just held it up to me, and I'm thinking, I don't really speak Dari, but really rather you didn't unleash a round which would blow me straight across the road. But it is very important that we are there to distinguish ourselves. And we want to, what do? Are you there to take sides? If you are taking a lift, or we're giving a lift, and there was another occasion where someone shot at us because we wouldn't give them a ride in our armoured Land Rover, we become part of the war. And I think our responsibility is to be separate from the wars that we cover. This is Sri Lanka, where I covered the tsunami and humanitarian crisis. I mean, I could play you the clip, but I think we'll move on because time is short. Again, you are there to hold people, hold the aid agencies to account, but you're not there to feed the population. We do have water supplies, and if someone is next to me and is thirsty, of course, I'm going to share my bottle of water. But the BBC has sent me with a finite amount of supplies to be in a war zone. And if I give away my food, I can't report on what we're doing. And again, when you're in that sort of situation, the baby in the vulture thought comes back to you. Are you just a pariah on other people's misery? I would argue that what we're doing is we're actually raising awareness. The aid effort that went on, the money that poured in after, recently in the Philippines, or what we saw after the tsunami in Sri Lanka, was amazing. There's a very famous war photographer, and I think it's Don McCullen, who used to work for the Sunday Times and then went to the Observer, who said you can't take good photos if you've got a tear in the viewfinder. And I think what he was saying was, there is no room for emotion in being a war correspondent. You've got to keep a distance. You've got to shield yourself from all of that. I would say that's virtually impossible. I think you do feel emotionally involved. I covered the shootings that took place in Norway by Anders Behring Breivik, the white supremacist. And I interviewed these kids, 18, 19, the same age as my daughter was at the time. And I heard the stories of people's survival. You are moved. You do feel concerned. But I want to talk a bit about how we report wars, because I think there are some interesting issues here. Right, this is a Katyusha rocket launcher. I filmed this in Afghanistan. It's the standard stuff that we will use that will be the start of a TV report. I worry that we sometimes create a Disney effect on war. We show fantastic pictures of things flying out of rocket launchers or of tank rounds, but we are very, very chary about showing what happens when the thing lands. And I think we need to. Now, I'm going to show you a clip now which is sort of disturbing. This was from an Ian Panel report in Syria last year.
But obviously, within the chaos of the situation, it's very difficult to know exactly what's going on.
This wasn't a chemical weapon, but a so-called conventional one, banned from being used in civilian areas by many countries. But 15-year-old Ahmed's government hasn't signed that treaty.
Dear United Nations, you're calling peace. You're calling for peace. What kind of peace are you calling for? Don't you see this? Don't you see this? What do you need to see? We are just human beings. We want to live. You know? This is our right to live. This is.
I'm sorry if you found that horrible. It is horrible. But war is horrible, and the things that happen to people in wars is horrible. And I think that we should be very careful about sanitizing too much of what we report on the television. Now, if you go to some other cultures, some other parts of the world, they will show you everything, and you will see grizzle and gore and bits of body and all the rest of it, which is distressing. But I think that we shouldn't make war look like it's kind of, oh, look at those rockets, aren't they fantastic, flying out of those rocket launchers. I think we have a responsibility. I want to say a word about impartiality as well. Are we impartial? Yeah, we're not on anyone's side. But people have this idea that we should be balanced. If a massacre has taken place and someone has done the massacring and someone else has been massacred, it's hard to say, well, there's a symmetry of guilt, or oh, they're both as bad as each other. I think that Ian Panel there, talking about how the government hadn't signed this chemical weapons treaty, was very powerful. And I think that we must bear in mind that we are there to give an analysis of what has happened. We must be accurate. We mustn't make things up, but we have to hold people to account. I just want to ask you, how many of you in this room have got smartphones? I'm guessing, okay, maybe a better question would be, how many people haven't? Okay, maybe 3. What's wrong with you? Why haven't you got a smartphone? Anyway, I bet you nearly everyone has uploaded. If anything, God forbid, happened in this room now, there would be video footage galore of it across YouTube within seconds. So why do we need people like me maybe getting on a plane to Kiev this evening when there are going to be plenty of people there who have got cameras who can film it themselves? Is there any role for a war correspondent now that we've got social media? I would say there is. I think that we have to be there because, I mean, I want to just show you this particular thing. This happened in Gaza. A very good colleague of mine, John Donison, retweeted a photo of a baby that had been killed, which had been put up by a Palestinian group saying, this is the result of Israeli action that had taken place in Gaza. He retweeted it. It turned out that the photo was actually a Syrian baby, and it was from the troubles in Syria. So the BBC had put out inaccurate information by retweeting it. And we got into a lot of trouble for it. And of course, wherever you go, there are people who want to propagandize their war, their issues, their concerns. That is not our job. Our job is so that people are better informed about what happens in war and in disaster zones so that they can make balanced judgments. I just want to go back to where we started. And I was talking about the macho culture, the people who don't care. Kevin Carter won a Pulitzer Prize for that photograph, but he committed suicide within a year of taking it. The pressures on people who go to war zones, and the media have come in for a bit of a kicking, and probably justifiably. Last week was the Royal Television Society annual shindig where we congratulate ourselves and say how marvellous we are as television journalists. But the evening starts with a roll call of all those people who've died covering wars in the past year. I think about 130 from Syria. There are an awful lot more journalists who are currently kidnapped in Syria, but we don't talk about it because actually it's too risky and we want the people out safely. We're not perfect. War reporting is ugly. Being in disaster zones is distressing, and I know people who have suffered from post-traumatic stress as a result of being there. When I was a young journalist, I went and saw my editor. He was sending me to cover the Troubles in Northern Ireland. He said, John, 2 bits of advice. 1, there is no story so good that it's worth getting your head blown off for. 2, if the bullets fly, duck. Unfortunately, because thankfully there are many people who are extremely brave, camera crews, satellite engineers, who will go to these zones so that hopefully we, as a group, are a better informed democracy, and thank goodness there are people who are prepared to take those risks and do that job. Thank you very much.